By noon, the well rope had frozen stiff as bone, and Clara Vance had split the skin across 2 knuckles trying to make one more cord of wood before dark. Blackwood Ridge lay under a white sky. The pines bent with ice. The creek made no sound under its glass lid. Smoke from Clara's chimney came thin, then the wind tore it into the ditch. She set a boot on the oak round and swung. The blade struck crooked. Iron rang off frozen heartwood. Pain ran up both arms. Fresh blood pushed through the rag round her palm. She pulled the axe free and spat where the blood fell. Come on, then. The log sat whole. Hooves broke the crusted road behind her. 4 riders came along the fence line, hats white with snow. Deputy Pike rode first with Harlan Sterling's brass badge pinned over his fat belly. Lem Roach rode last, laughing before there was cause. Well, now Pike called. Widow Vance is fightin' a tree. Roach leaned in his saddle. $2 she's froze stiff by Sunday. That roof'll cave by Friday, another said. Pike looked over her place. The sagging barn. The north fence down. The woodpile near gone. Paper comes due end of month. Shame land like this sitting under a woman with no man and no sense. Clara's fingers tightened round the handle. Tell your mayor he can come speak to me plain. Pike grinned, showing brown teeth. He don't speak to dead women. The riders laughed. One spat tobacco into her snow and left it there like a stain. Clara swung. The axe bounced. Her shoulder jarred. The handle tore loose and dropped at her feet. She kept her mouth shut while the men watched. Roach whistled soft. Lord, ain't she a sight? Then his horse quit moving. All 4 animals raised their heads toward the timber. The wind came first, dragging loose snow across the yard. Then a shape moved between the pines, big as a church door. A man stepped out of the white bent under a bear hide coat. His beard was black with ice. A scar ran from temple to mouth, thick and pale, pulling one eye lower. His bare hands hung purple with cold, the knuckles broken crooked. No one said his name at first. Then Pike crossed himself. Thorn. Roach's face went loose. That's him, the butcher from Crow Creek. He eats what he kills. Another muttered. The giant did not look at them. His eyes fixed on the fallen axe, then on Clara's torn palm. Clara stepped back. The man came on. Snow cracked under his boots. He smelled of pine smoke, iron, and old blood washed thin by weather. He bent, picked up the axe, and weighed it once. Clara raised her chin. That's mine. He looked at her. One eye gray. One near black under the scar. Neither blinked. Thorn turned, set a round of oak upright, and swung. The axe came down like a rifle shot. The log flew apart. He set another. Split it. Another. Split it. No hurry. No curse. No grunt. The dull axe cut under his hands as if it had remembered what iron was for. Chips slapped the snow. The pile grew high. Pike backed his horse a step. Roach swallowed loud. Ain't natural. Thorn lifted the knotty length that had beaten Clara since morning. He turned at once and struck. The wood cracked straight down the heart, clean as bread cut with a church knife. Before the sun dropped behind the ridge, the frozen heap was gone. Enough split wood waited to keep her chimney breathing for weeks. Thorn planted the axe in the stump. He did not ask for pay. He did not ask for thanks. He picked up Clara's bloody rag and set it on top of the woodpile. Pike found his tongue, but it came out small. Best keep moving, Thorn. This ain't your business. The giant turned his head just enough. Pike looked at the scar and shut his mouth. Thorn walked toward the timber, back into the storm that had brought him. Clara stood with blood drying on her fingers, the axe buried deep and town cruelty sitting useless in the snow. The man they called a beast had left her warmth. Before he vanished, Clara heard her own voice cut through the wind. Wait. Wait. The word struck Silas Thorne before he reached the tree line. He stopped with one boot in the drift and one hand near the black pines. Snow caught in the torn fur across his shoulders. For a long breath, he did not turn. Behind Clara Pike and his riders had gone quiet. Their horses stamped and blew steam, but no man laughed now. Clara bent, picked up the coffee pot from the stove inside and poured the last of it into a tin cup. The bottom of the pot scraped dry. That cup had been meant for her supper. Maybe breakfast too, if the flour held out. She stepped onto the porch. The boards bit through the soles of her boots. Her split knuckles left red marks on the cup handle. "You earned this," Silas turned then. Pike gave a low snort. "Widow, you best not feed strays." Clara did not look at him. Silas crossed the yard slow, like a man walking toward a trap he had already seen. He stopped 2 arm lengths from the porch. Clara held out the cup. His hands came up. They were not hands made for gentleness. The knuckles had been broken and set wrong. Old rope burns circled both wrists. Across one palm ran a white cut so deep it made the fingers curl, strange even at rest. He took the coffee with care. The cup looked near child small between his fingers. Steam rose against his ruined face. His scar pulled tight in the cold, but the corner of his mouth eased the smallest measure when the heat reached him. He shut both hands round the tin and stood there as if he had forgotten the whole world could still bite. Pike shifted in his saddle. "Mayor hears of this, you'll answer." Clara looked at him then. "Tell him I gave coffee to a man who worked." Roach spat again, but it missed the porch and landed on his own boot. The others saw. No one laughed. Silas drank. Not fast, not greedy. One careful swallow, then another. The steam dampened the ice in his beard. Clara watched the woodpile behind him. Rows of split oak lay square against the shed wall. Not thrown, not stacked like hired hands did it when they wanted pay and leaving both. Each piece had been laid bark out, lean tight, with air enough between for winter to pass through and not rot it. Even in this weather the work had order. Her roof sagged. Her fence gaped open. Her hands burned. Her dead husband's coat hung from a peg inside empty as a promise that had run out of breath. And yet, for the first time since morning, the stove would not die before dawn. A hard laugh broke from her throat. It was too sharp for the cold yard. It made Pike's horse twitch. Clara pressed her torn hand against her apron and shook her head. "Well," she said, looking at the man with the scar and the coffee cup, "where were you 5 years ago?" The yard changed. Not with wind, not with sound. Silas stopped breathing. The cup stayed halfway to his mouth. His gray eye fixed on Clara, but the black one seemed to look through her past. The porch? Past the frozen road, back toward some place no map had kept. The small ease left his face. The scar turned pale. Clara's laugh died before it finished. Pike sat straighter. Silas lowered the cup. A thin crack ran through the tin where his thumb pressed too hard. Clara took one step down from the porch. "I only meant I know." 2 words, not loud. They hit harder than the axe had. Silas set the cup on the porch rail. One black drop slid over the rim and froze before it reached the floorboard. He turned from her then. No thanks. No farewell. No curse for the men who had named him beast. He walked straight into the white shoulders bent beneath snow and old hurt until the storm swallowed him whole. Clara stood there with the last warmth in the house cooling on the rail, and 5 years opened behind her like a grave she had never dared look into. Silas came back before first light 3 days later. Clara heard no horse, no wagon. Only one hard knock from the north wall, then another. She took the rifle down and opened the door with the barrel low. He stood in the yard, with cedar planks over one shoulder and a sack of iron nails in his fist. Frost had turned his beard white. He did not ask leave. He looked at the roof. North Pitch'll fall. Clara kept the rifle in hand. I didn't hire you. No. He set the planks down and climbed the ladder. By noon, the leak over her bed was covered. By dusk, the broken rail near the creek stood straight. He worked as if each board had insulted him, and each nail owed him money. When Clara brought coffee, he drank it, standing eyes on the fence line, never inside the house. That was how it went. A week. Then 2. Silas patched the barn door so the wind could not rip through it. He hauled stone from the creek bed and set them under the sagging porch. He mended the chicken shed. He drove posts so deep the frozen ground split around them. Clara found ways to pay where coin had failed. Beans left in a covered pot. A blanket hung near the woodpile when the wind cut hard. Coffee, always coffee, dark as burned corn and dear as gold. He never stayed long. He never spoke of 5 years. By the end of the 3rd week, Clara's place no longer looked ready to kneel. It stood braced and mean against winter like an old woman with a shotgun across her lap. Then Mayor Harlan Sterling rode out. He came at sunset with Pike Roach and 6 men from town who never missed church and never missed a beating when it was lawful enough. They found Silas in the black timber dragging split rails from a fallen pine. Harlan wore a fur collar and fine gloves. Snow clung to his mustache. "Mr. Thorne," he said. Still pretending to be a man, Silas did not set down the rails. Harlan nodded. Pike swung first. The club struck Silas across the ribs. The rails fell. Roach came from behind and drove a rifle stock into his shoulder. Silas stumbled 1 step and caught himself on a pine trunk. His fists closed. The sound was small, leather stretching, bone shifting. Every man backed away at once. Harlan smiled. There he is. Crow Creek butcher. Go on. Split 1 skull. Just 1. He stepped closer, close enough that his clean boot touched Silas's. Then by midnight I'll have every soul in Blackwood saying, Widow Vance hid a killer, fed him, put him to work, and shared his plans. Pike here will swear it. Roach will swear it. Half these men will swear they saw her hand you the axe. Silas's jaw moved once. Harlan's voice dropped. They will drag her out under the lamp pole before the snow quits. The wind ran through the pines. Silas looked past them toward Clara's ridge. His hands opened. Pike hit him again. This time Silas did not lift an arm. The men came in hard, then brave as dogs behind a fence. A club to the back, a boot to the knee, a rifle butt under the chin. Silas went down to 1 hand, Rose went down again. Not 1 blow came back. Harlan watched until his cigar went out. At last he bent over Silas and spoke low. Touch 1 more board on that widow's land, and I'll make her name dirt. When they rode off, the snow under Silas had gone dark in places. Night had settled by the time Clara heard the hammer. 1 strike, then another. She opened the door. Silas stood by the creek fence, coat torn, face cut, 1 eye nearly shut. Blood had dried black along his beard. His left arm hung wrong, but his right hand held the hammer. Clara crossed the yard barefoot in her boots unlaced. Who did this? He set a nail and struck. Silas, another strike. She caught his wrist. He did not pull free. His skin burned through her fingers. His breath came rough and each one scraped. Tell me. He looked at the broken rail, then at the dark road beyond it. If the fence falls, he said, they come through. The storm came down on Blackwood Ridge like God had tipped a flour sack over the whole county. By dark, the road was gone. Fence posts showed only their black caps. The barn moaned in the wind. Snow pressed against Clara's door until the latch trembled. Inside, she wrapped Silas's ribs with torn bed linen. He sat on a stool by the stove, too large for the room, his head bowed under the rafters. Each breath caught behind his teeth. When she pulled the cloth tight, his fingers bit into his knee, but no sound left him. You ought to be laid up, Clara said. He looked toward the window. Lantern light moved on the ridge. One flame, then 3. Then a crooked line of them, climbing through the storm. Clara went still. Silas stood before, and she told him to stay down. The stool scraped back and struck the wall. Outside came the pound of horses and men cursing the snow. A fist hammered the door so hard, dust fell from the beam. Clara Vance Harlan Sterling called, "Open this door in the name of the town." Clara took the rifle from its pegs. Silas reached for his coat. "No," she said. He looked at her. "They came for me," she said. "Let them look me in the face." She opened the door. Wind slammed the room full of snow and lantern smoke. Harlan stood below the porch with his fur collar white and his eyes bright as wet stones. Pike held a folded paper high. Behind them stood near 20 men, hats, low rifles in hand, torches hissing in the storm. Harlan smiled. "By order of Blackwood Ridge, this property is seized for unpaid debt and unlawful harboring of a wanted killer." Clara kept the rifle across her body. "That paper's a lie." Pike shook it once. "Town seals on it. Your thumb could wear a ring and still be a pig's foot." A few men shifted. Someone coughed into his scarf. Harlan's smile thinned. "Step down, widow." "No. This is lawful seizure." "Then wait for daylight and a judge. There ain't a judge close enough to save you." Clara raised the rifle. The porch boards groaned under her boots. Snow gathered in her hair and along the barrel. Her arms were steady. Her thumb found the hammer and drew it back with one clean click. Harlan stared at the muzzle. "You shoot me," he said, "you swing before morning." Clara sighted down the barrel. "Then I won't die alone." The men behind him went quiet enough to hear the torches spit. Harlan's jaw worked. His gloved hand lifted. "Take her." 2 men stepped forward. The barn door blew open behind Clara. It hit the wall with a crack like a shot. Silas came out of the black mouth of it. He had no hat, no coat. His shirt was dark where the bandage had soaked through. In one hand he carried the heavy axe from Clara's stump, its blade black with pine pitch and old rust. In the other he held nothing at all. He walked past Clara and planted himself at the foot of the porch, between her and every gun. The torchlight crawled across his scar. Snow struck his bare forearms and melted there. Harlan barked a laugh. "Look there, boys. The dog comes when the widow whistles." Silas said nothing. Clara stepped down behind him. "Move." He did not. Harlan wiped snow from his mouth and spat into the drift. "I gave you leave to crawl away, Thorne." Silas lifted the axe to his shoulder. Every rifle rose. Clara saw Pike's finger tighten. Saw Roach lick his cracked lip. Saw Harlan's hand hang in the air ready to fall. The storm held its breath around the porch. Harlan's hand dropped. "Fire! Fire!" Pike's rifle jerked up. Silas moved first. Not at the men. At the porch. He swung the axe down with both hands and buried the blade deep in the top step. The crack split the storm wide open. Snow jumped from the railing. The first torch went out. Pike flinched so hard, his shot flew into the dark sky and broke a pine limb above the road. No other man fired. Silas left the axe standing there, handle quivering between him and Harlan Sterling. Then he reached into his torn shirt. Clara's fingers tightened on her rifle. She saw Pike aim again. Saw Roach bare his teeth like a scared dog. Silas drew out a leather packet wrapped in oilcloth. Not a knife. Not a pistol. Paper. He pulled the cord with his teeth and opened the packet one-handed. Sealed pages slid out thick and clean with red wax pressed flat under the mark of the territorial governor. He threw the first sheet at Harlan's boots. It struck the snow and stayed there. Harlan looked down, his mouth opened then shut. Silas's voice came out changed. Not the rough scrape Clara had heard at the fence. Not the 2-word wound from the porch rail. This voice had schooling in it. courtrooms, drafting rooms, men who signed their names with silver pens and expected the world to move. By order of the Territorial Office at Denver, the debt note held against Clara Vance is paid in full. The men stared. The wind worried the paper at Harlan's feet. Silas threw another sheet. The North Meadow, the Creek Timber, and the Lower Mill Road bought at auction last month from the Railroad Trust. Another sheet. The Livery Ground and bank lien settled. Another. The Town Hall mortgage purchased outright. Harlan bent and snatched up the first page. His gloved thumb rubbed the seal as if wax might turn false under pressure. "You can't read law to me," he said. Silas stepped closer. "I wrote half the lines you stole from. That stopped even the horses." Harlan's eyes cut to the men behind him. "This is trick paper." Pike leaned from the saddle, squinting at the seal. "Mayor, shut your mouth." Silas pulled one last document from the packet. He held it high enough for every man to see the red mark and black signatures. "This is notice of removal. Harlan Sterling is dispossessed from all land and structures now held under my name. Town offices included." Roach looked at Harlan. "He owns the hall." Silas did not look at Roach. "He owns the chair Harlan sits in." The words ran through the crowd without anyone saying them twice. Harlan's face changed color under the torchlight. He crumpled the page in one fist. "I am mayor of Blackwood Ridge." Silas reached down, took the crushed paper from Harlan's hand, and smoothed it against his own chest. The act was slow, worse than a punch, until morning. Harlan lifted his cane. Silas's scarred hand closed around the silver handle before it rose higher than a belt buckle. The cane cracked once under his grip. Not in two. Just enough that everyone heard what he chose not to break. Clara stepped from behind him then. She lowered the rifle a finger's width, not all the way. "Read the rest, Harlan." He stared at her. She nodded toward the packet, out loud. No one moved. Snow hissed against the dead torch. Pike slid from his saddle, picked up one page, and read under his breath. His lips stopped halfway through. He looked at Harlan as if seeing the man without fine cloth for the first time. Silas planted one boot on the buried axe head and pulled it free from the step. The blade came out clean. He laid it across his shoulder and looked at Harlan. "I am not here to be put off," he said. "I am here to put you off my land." No man on that ridge seemed able to remember his own tongue. Harlan stood with papers in the snow around his boots. Red wax, black ink, names from Denver, names he could not buy with corn liquor or scare with a badge. Then his voice tore loose. "Gold," he said. "Where'd you get gold? You sleep in ditches. You wear dead hides. You ain't got sense enough to shave." Silas wiped snow from one seal with his thumb. "I had 5 years." Harlan laughed too loud. It broke in the middle. "To what rob graves?" Silas looked past him toward the town lights blurred under the storm. "To collect what was mine." Pike had another page in his hand. His face had gone slack under his hat. "Mayor," he said, "this name here. Put it down." Pike did not. Clara stepped into the lantern glow and read the line over his shoulder. Silas E. Thorne, Chief Engineer. The letters sat plain as nails. Her eyes lifted. Silas kept his gaze on Harlan. "I surveyed this ridge before there was a road through it. Drew the grade for the mill line. Set the first stone under your town hall. I knew where the creek would flood, where the ground would hold, where men could build above spring mud." The crowd shifted. Boots scraped ice. Harlan's lips pulled back. "No one knows that." "You made sure." Silas touched the scar on his face like a mark on old timber. "You took my maps, took my ledgers, put your name where mine had been. Then you and 3 men dragged me above Crowcut after dark." Roach backed half a step. Silas's black eye moved to him. One of them had a yellow scarf. Roach's hand flew to his throat, though nothing hung there now. Clara heard the creak under the ice, then low and trapped beneath all that snow. Silas went on. You cut me so my own mother would not know me. You pushed me over the cut. Told town folks a wild man had killed the engineer and run off with his pay. Pike lowered the paper. Harlan's cane shook against his leg. Lies. A man from the back said, my brother hauled stone that year. He said there was another fellow before Sterling. Another voice. Thorne. I heard the name. Clara's mouth had gone dry. 5 years. Daniel coming home with mud to his knees, saying only that a good man had been wronged, and no one in town had spine enough to say it. Then the banknote. Then Harlan's men at the door. Then fever. Then the grave behind the west field where the cross leaned each winter. Silas turned to her. Daniel Vance came to the cut that night. Clara gripped the porch rail. He tried to pull me up. Snow ran down her sleeve and into her cuff. They beat him for it. Took his team. Called the debt legal. Silas's voice thinned, then steadied. He left me his canteen. I lived because of it. Clara looked toward the dark west field. No tear fell. The cold took it first. Harlan began to back away. Pike stood in front of him. No, Pike said. It was not brave. It was small, but it held. One by one, the rifles lowered. Men who had come to watch a widow dragged out now looked at their boots. Roach turned first and stumbled toward his horse. Others followed, heads down, torches sinking into the storm. Harlan went last, with Pike walking behind him and the torn papers gathered under one arm. By dawn, the wind quit. Blackwood Ridge lay clean and hard under a pale sky. Clara sat on the porch step beside Silas. The axe rested across the rail. The packet of deeds lay between them. Coffee steamed in 2 tin cups. She looked at the fence posts he had driven with split hands. You didn't have to buy the whole town just to keep me safe. Silas took a slow drink. The scar pulled when he looked at her, but this time it did not make his face hard.